It started on a sweltering Saturday morning in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside Atlanta. The sun was already punishing, baking the concrete driveways and shimmering off the hoods of parked SUVs. Birds chirped in the trees above. But beneath that, something felt off. You could almost taste tension in the humid air. And then the knock came. 3 sharp raps at the door of a modest 2-story brick home. A home lined with neat flower beds and an American flag fluttering softly on the porch. Inside, Marcus Hill paused mid-sip of his coffee. He was 42 tall, with the kind of posture you don't forget. Years in the army had carved discipline into his bones. He kept his hair cropped close, his beard trimmed. Everything about him said steady, prepared, deliberate. He wasn't expecting anyone. Marcus set his mug down on the kitchen counter, eyes narrowing as the knocks came again. Not polite this time. Harder, more insistent. When he opened the door, what he saw stopped him cold. 2 men stood on his porch wearing navy polo shirts with HOA security stitched in white across the chest. Dark sunglasses hid their eyes. One had a clipboard. The other rested his hand near his belt, where, unbelievably, a holstered sidearm sat snug against his hip. "Morning," the one with the clipboard said. His tone was flat, officious. "We are here on behalf of the Homeowners Association. We've received complaints about your property and some concerning reports about firearms." Marcus blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Sir," the man went on, "this neighborhood has strict bylaws regarding storage of dangerous weapons. You're required to comply. We are here to inspect your property." It was absurd. Marcus had lived here for 6 years, paid every fee, kept his yard immaculate. He'd read the bylaws backwards and forwards. Nothing about inspections, nothing about firearms. And since when did HOA security carry guns? He stepped onto the porch, squaring his shoulders. "You've got no authority to inspect anything on my property, and I sure don't recall signing over my Second Amendment rights when I bought this house." The second man, the one with the gun, shifted his weight and gave a thin smile. "Sir, let's not make this difficult. We can do this the easy way or what?" Marcus cut him off, his voice calm but steely. Inside, the house smelled faintly of coffee and cedar polish. Outside, a neighbor across the street had stopped watering her flowers to stare. Marcus felt heat creeping up his neck. This wasn't just about some trumped-up HOA complaint. These men were testing him, sizing him up, seeing if they could intimidate him. He thought about the safe in his basement, the one bolted into concrete, containing legally owned firearms he barely used except at the range. He thought about the endless drills and protocols he'd been taught in the army for situations exactly like this. 2 men, coordinated, wearing uniforms to project authority they didn't actually have. Marcus kept his voice even. "You're trespassing. Leave my property now." Clipboard guy's jaw tightened. "Sir, refusal to comply can result in fines, legal action, even forfeiture of property under the HOA's rules. We can get a warrant." Marcus laughed once, short and humorless. "No, you can't, and you're not law enforcement." He reached for his phone, but the man with the gun took a step closer. The tension snapped like an electric wire. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. "Sir," gunman said, "don't escalate this." Marcus stared at them both. Something in his gut told him this wasn't a random HOA stunt. This was coordinated, targeted, maybe even political. He glanced at the neighbor still watching, her phone now up, recording. "Good." His voice dropped lower, colder. "You've got 10 seconds to leave my porch, or you're gonna regret it." Clipboard guy opened his mouth to speak, but Marcus had already moved. He turned, shut the door firmly, and flipped the deadbolt. He wasn't panicking. He was thinking, counting, remembering protocols. Inside the dim hallway, he pressed his back to the wall, phone in hand. He started dialing a number he hadn't used in years. An old army buddy, now a lawyer. He whispered into the phone, "Hey, it's Marcus. We've got a situation." Outside, the men were conferring quietly. One gestured toward the side of the house. The other spoke into a radio clip to his belt. Marcus's stomach dropped. This wasn't over. They weren't leaving. And then he heard it. The metallic click of his side gate opening. Someone was already moving around to the backyard. Marcus's eyes hardened. Military training flooded back like muscle memory. If these HOA cops thought they could walk in and seize his property, his rights, they had no idea what kind of man they were dealing with. He set his coffee mug down. His hands were steady. His voice was low. "All right," he muttered to himself. Protocol Alpha. The front doorknob rattled. Marcus took a deep breath. This was about to get real. Marcus moved quickly but quietly through his hallway. His bare feet patted against the cool hardwood floors as he slipped into the den, where a tall bookcase concealed a reinforced steel door. He swung it open and stepped inside. The air in the hidden room smelled faintly of gun oil and cedar. This wasn't a man cave. It was a compact operations room he'd built after leaving the army. One wall held a neatly organized pegboard of tools, tactical gear, and laminated checklists. Another had a corkboard map of the neighborhood with pins and notes he'd made when crime had briefly spiked a few years ago. Marcus had never actually thought he'd need to use any of it. Until now. He pressed a small button under the desk. Outside, his security cameras whirred to life, feeding live images to a mounted monitor. He saw the two men on his porch, now joined by a third figure at the edge of his lawn. Another navy shirt, another pair of sunglasses. He also saw one of them creeping along the side of his house, trying the back gate. "Unbelievable," Marcus muttered. He glanced at the framed photo on his desk. Himself in fatigues, arms slung around his buddy Terrence. Afghanistan, 2011. Dust everywhere. Smiles forced, but eyes bright. Terrence had been the one he'd just called. A lawyer now, but still sharp. Still a fighter. Marcus's phone buzzed, and he snatched it up. "Marcus, what's going on?" Terrence's voice came through, low and quick. "Got a couple of imposters on my porch," Marcus said, claiming their HOA security. "Armed. Want to inspect my guns." There was a pause. Then Terrence swore softly. "That's illegal 6 ways from Sunday. Don't let them in. Call the real police if you have to. I'll start making calls." Marcus looked at the monitor again. The third man was pacing near the street, glancing at passing cars. His gut tightened. "I think they're trying to flank me. Do not engage," Terrence warned. "Just document everything. And Marcus, be careful. These people sound desperate." Marcus ended the call and switched to his security app, snapping high-res photos from each camera. He also opened a drawer and pulled out a small, inconspicuous black case. Inside was not a gun, but a compact body camera and a slim tactical earpiece. He clipped the camera to his shirt and slipped the earpiece in. He wasn't planning to go outside. Not yet. But he wanted every second recorded. As he moved back toward the living room, he felt memories pressing in. Dusty streets in Kabul, convoys ambushed, the endless drills about infiltration, misdirection, and intimidation tactics. He'd seen this kind of playbook before. You dress up like authority. You act confident. You corner your target. 9 times out of 10, they comply. But Marcus wasn't 9 out of 10. He unlocked a side window and peered out. The man by the gate was inside the yard now, poking at Marcus's grill and storage shed like he had a right to be there. Marcus's jaw clenched. He slid the window open a crack. "You're trespassing," he called. "Leave now." The man didn't even look up. "I said leave," Marcus barked. This time the man turned, smirking. "Sir, HOA policy allows us to inspect." "Wrong." Marcus cut him off. "You're impersonating security and breaking the law. Get off my property before I call the police." The man shrugged and went back to poking around. Marcus closed the window and took a deep breath. His fingers itched to grab one of his firearms, but he knew better. The optics of a black man with a gun confronting armed imposters could go south fast. He needed control. Documentation. Witnesses. He sent a quick text to his neighborhood watch group. "Urgent. 3 armed men on my property claiming HOA security. Not authorized. Please record if you see anything." Almost immediately, 3 dots bubbled back, already filming from across the street. "Be safe." "Good." More eyes. Marcus slipped back into his operations room and clicked on his intercom system, which broadcast to speakers hidden on his porch and in his yard. His voice came through loud and steady. "You are trespassing on private property. Leave immediately." The police have been called. All three men froze. The one at the gate looked up sharply. Clipboard guy stepped closer to the door. "We're not trespassing," he shouted. "We have legal authority." "No, you don't," Marcus replied through the speaker. "You have 10 seconds to vacate, or you'll be arrested for impersonating law enforcement." Silence for a beat. Then clipboard guy's voice turned mocking. "Big words for someone hiding inside. Come out and talk like a manual." Marcus's lips twitched in a humorless smile. "Not my first rodeo," he muttered. He switched to another camera angle. 2 patrol cars had turned onto the main road a block away. Real police. Good. Someone must have called. But before relief could settle in, he saw the third imposter lift his radio again. His posture shifted, more aggressive. Marcus couldn't hear what he said, but the effect was instant. Clipboard guy and gun guy both started toward the side of the house. "They're going for the back," Marcus realized aloud. He dashed to the basement stairs and descended into the cool dimness. The air smelled faintly of concrete and oil. In one corner, bolted to the floor, was his gun safe. He knelt and opened it, but he didn't pull out a rifle. Instead, he grabbed a heavy-duty tactical flashlight and a non-lethal pepper ball launcher, a piece of kit from his security consulting days. If he had to confront them, he'd start non-lethal. Keep the high ground. Above him, floorboards creaked. They were inside the fence now. Marcus exhaled slowly, centering himself. Every move, every decision, felt like a chess game. He could almost hear his old commander's voice. "Control the terrain. Control the optics. Don't let them dictate the fight." He whispered to himself, "Okay, military protocol. Step 2. Then, louder, into his earpiece. "Terrence, if you're still there, they're breaching the backyard." Terrence's voice came back tight. "Police are en route. Stay calm." But Marcus could hear something else. The soft click of his basement door handle above. One of them had entered his house. The hair on Marcus's arms stood on end. His heart rate slowed, not sped up, slowed, like it always had before a firefight. Calm, cold, calculated. He looked at the pepper ball launcher in his hands, then at the stairs. "Time to take back my house," he murmured. Marcus steadied himself at the foot of the basement stairs. The faintest creak above told him one of the imposters had entered his home. He could smell the faint tang of gun oil coming from his own launcher mixed with the scent of fresh coffee from the kitchen drifting down the stairwell. The basement light cast a pale glow over the concrete floor. Marcus crouched low, his back against the cool wall. Pepperball launcher pressed tight to his chest. He closed his eyes for a second and listened. Years of training had taught him that sound told the truth when eyes couldn't. 2 distinct sets of footsteps upstairs. Slow, searching, copy. "Back door clear," a voice muttered above. The man was talking into a radio. Another voice, fainter, replied from outside. "Proceed. Secure the firearms." Marcus's eyes snapped open. Secure the firearms. They weren't even pretending anymore. This was a full-on home invasion masquerading as an inspection. He slid his phone from his pocket and tapped his security app. Every camera was rolling. The footage was uploading to the cloud automatically. If anything happened, there'd be proof. He also noticed blue and red flashes on one of the front cameras. Police cruisers turning onto his street. Real backup was minutes away. He just had to hold the line. But then his heart skipped. On the screen, one of the imposters outside was waving frantically at the approaching patrol car, gesturing toward Marcus's house like he was the victim. "They're flipping the narrative," Marcus muttered. "Trying to make me the threat." He slipped the phone back into his pocket and took a deep, centering breath. Calm, focused. He whispered his old mantra from Afghanistan. Assess, plan, execute. Upstairs, one of the men's footsteps grew louder. He was coming toward the basement door. Marcus aimed the pepperball launcher at the stairwell. He flicked on the tactical flashlight mounted to the barrel. A bright white beam slashed across the dim stairs. The doorknob turned slowly. Marcus raised his voice, calm but firm. "This is private property. You're trespassing. Leave now." No response. The door cracked open. A sliver of light spilling down. A dark shape appeared in the gap. Marcus fired. The pepperball round hissed through the air, and burst against the doorframe in a cloud of bright orange irritant powder. The man cursed, coughing violently, stumbling back. Marcus stepped forward, voice booming. "Out of my house now." There was a scramble of footsteps, a door slamming upstairs. Marcus listened. One of them had retreated, but another voice shouted from the kitchen, "Armed suspect in the basement. Armed suspect." The words hit Marcus like ice water. They were already setting him up in case the real police came through the door. He had seconds to control the situation. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time, launcher still in hand. The smell of irritant powder clung to the air, acrid and biting. His eyes watered slightly as he reached the top. The kitchen was empty except for the swinging back door. He darted to the living room window and peered out. 2 police cruisers now idled at the curb. Officers were stepping out, hands hovering near their holsters. Across the lawn, the imposters were animatedly pointing toward Marcus's house, shouting. Marcus could hear fragments through the glass. "He's got guns, threatening us. We are HOA security," he cursed under his breath. They were painting him as an aggressor. His phone buzzed. It was Terrence again. "Marcus, listen to me," Terrence said urgently. "Police are on scene. They think you're the suspect. You've got to get ahead of this narrative. Show your hands. Get your footage ready." Marcus moved to the front door, but didn't open it. He pressed his body camera to make sure it was still recording. The tiny red light blinked steadily. "Terrence," he said into the phone, "I'm not stepping outside until those imposters are disarmed. They've been in my house. They're impersonating security. I've got it all on video." "Good," Terrence replied. "Call 911 yourself, get your version on the record." Marcus hung up and immediately dialed. The dispatcher's voice came on the line. He spoke clearly, crisply, the way he used to give radio reports in combat. "This is Marcus Hill at 457 Old Briar Lane. Multiple armed individuals impersonating HOA security have entered my property. I'm a lawful homeowner, legally armed with non-lethal equipment. Police on scene appear unaware of imposters' actions. Request immediate supervisor response." The dispatcher acknowledged. "Stay where you are, sir. Do not engage further. Units en route." Marcus ended the call and looked out again. One of the imposters was now clutching his face from the pepper ball powder, eyes red and streaming. Another was gesturing wildly at the police. The third had his hand near his holster, pretending to be ready in case Marcus emerged. His stomach turned. This was a play he'd seen before overseas. Sow chaos, paint the target as hostile, force authorities to act against him. He backed away from the window. The old training rose up like muscle memory. Control the terrain. He moved back into the hall, eyes scanning for vulnerabilities. He'd already locked the front door and bolted the side entrances. His blinds were down. He activated the high decibel alarm on his security system. Instantly, a piercing siren filled the house and yard. Outside, the imposters flinched. The police officers stepped back, startled. Good. Disrupt their rhythm. Marcus grabbed a laminated card from his operations room and stuck it to the window near the front door. It read, "I am the homeowner. Armed intruders impersonating HOA security have entered my property. I have video evidence. Please send a supervisor." He made sure it faced outward toward the police. Then he took one more step. He activated his drone. The small quadcopter lifted from its charging pad and zipped up through the open attic window, buzzing out over his lawn. Its camera streamed directly to his phone. From above, Marcus could see everything. The imposters' positions, the police officers, even his own front porch. He recorded them all. Minutes stretched. The siren still wailed. Through the drone feed, he saw a police sergeant arriving on scene, stepping out of a third car. She was already talking to the imposters, who gestured angrily toward the house. Marcus gritted his teeth. If she believed them first, he could be in real danger. His phone buzzed again. A text from Terrence. "Hold position. I'm talking to the precinct commander now." Marcus exhaled slowly. He felt the weight of every decision pressing down on him. One wrong move, and this could end in tragedy. Another headline, another statistic. But then his drone caught something chilling. One of the imposters, thinking no one could see, slipped a small object from his pocket and tucked it under Marcus's porch rail. "A gunna plant. They're setting me up." Marcus whispered. His hands tightened on the phone. He watched the sergeant glance back at the house, her brow furrowing. Marcus knew then. He couldn't wait for them to get it right. He had to show her the truth before they came crashing through his door. He squared his shoulders, eyes cold. Time for step 3, he muttered. Military protocol. The next move would change everything. Marcus stood at the center of his living room, breathing slowly as he watched the drone feed on his phone. The imposter crouched under his porch rail had just slipped a handgun into a flower pot, a perfect frame-up. One call to the police, and Marcus would be branded as a heavily armed homeowner threatening security personnel. The wail of his security alarm still pulsed through the walls like a heartbeat. Outside, police officers shifted uneasily, torn between the imposter's frantic accusations and the clear signs of something off about the scene. The sergeant who'd arrived last, a woman with a calm, commanding posture, was scanning Marcus's windows as if trying to see him. Marcus exhaled through his nose. This is the moment. Either he'd be dragged out in cuffs, or he'd break their narrative completely. He opened his ops box, a heavy-duty black case under his desk, and pulled out a ruggedized tablet. With a few swipes, he accessed the drone feed, the door cameras, and the interior footage from his own hallway. All of it streamed in real time. He selected the clip of the imposter planting the gun and queued it up to loop. Then he grabbed his Bluetooth speaker and set it on the windowsill. He tapped connect, and the device chirped. He took one more breath. Time to talk to the battlefield. Through the speaker, his voice boomed out across the front yard, clear and steady. This is Marcus Hill, homeowner at 457 Old Briar Lane. Armed imposters impersonating HOA security have entered my property and attempted to frame me with a weapon. I have video evidence streaming live to multiple locations. Supervising officer, please approach my porch alone. I will show you proof. Everything in the yard froze. The imposters whipped their heads toward the window, panic flickering across their faces. The police sergeant raised a hand to her colleagues, signaling them to hold. Marcus replayed the clip again over the speaker, the imposter tucking the gun into the flower pot. The audio from his drone carried the imposter's muffled words. He's got too many guns, plant this. The sergeant's face hardened. She turned sharply toward the imposters and barked something Marcus couldn't hear. Two of her officers immediately moved to separate them, hands resting on their holsters. Inside, Marcus's pulse slowed. Good. That's the wedge. He muted the speaker, set down his launcher, and raised both hands high so they'd be visible if anyone was watching through the blinds. Slowly, deliberately, he moved to the front door. He unlatched the bolt, but didn't open yet. Instead, he spoke through the door in a voice trained to carry. Sergeant, my hands are empty. My security system has captured everything. I'm opening the door slowly to show you the evidence. Please instruct your officers not to fire. Through the drone feed, he saw the sergeant nod and hold up her palm to her team. Marcus turned the knob and swung the door open. The late afternoon light spilled into his living room, glinting off the tablet in his hands. He stepped out onto the porch slowly, arms extended to display the screen. The sergeant approached alone, her eyes flicking from Marcus to the tablet. Mr. Hill? She asked, voice level. Yes, ma'am, Marcus said. Homeowner, former military police, legally armed inside, but holding nothing now. You're about to see a felony in progress. He tapped the screen. The clip of the imposter planting the gun played again. Then he swiped to show the footage of two men entering his house uninvited, rummaging through his hallway closet. They're not security, Marcus said flatly. They're criminals impersonating HOA personnel to steal my weapons or frame me. Every camera angle's uploading to the cloud. The sergeant watched, her jaw tightening. She raised her radio and spoke rapidly. Behind her, officers moved in on the imposters. One of them tried to back away. Two officers grabbed his arms and pinned him against a cruiser. Marcus felt the tension in his chest ease for the first time in half an hour, but he wasn't done. Sergeant, he said quietly, check the flower pot under my porch rail. There's a gun they planted to frame me. I haven't touched it. She turned to a younger officer and gave a crisp nod. The officer jogged up, crouched, and lifted the pot. His eyes widened. He held up the handgun in a gloved hand. Unregistered, he called. Serial number scratched off. The sergeant's radio crackled with voices. but she ignored it. She stepped closer to Marcus, lowering her tone. "Mr. Hill, you've done exactly the right thing staying calm. We're detaining all three of them now." Marcus glanced past her. The imposters were being handcuffed, their earlier bravado gone. One of them spat curses, but another kept his head down, trembling. Marcus's drone swooped lower, capturing every second. Still, Marcus didn't relax completely. "Ma'am," he said, "I need a full written record. My attorney's already on call. This entire situation was orchestrated." "You'll get it," she said. "First, let's secure the scene." 2 more patrol cars rolled up, lights flashing. Neighbors had begun to gather at the edges of their lawns, phones raised to record. The sergeant turned and addressed them loudly. "Everyone back inside, please. Police matter under control." Marcus followed her gaze. The HOA president himself was standing across the street, pale as chalk. Marcus locked eyes with him. The man turned and disappeared into his house. "Figures," Marcus muttered. Inside, his phone buzzed with a new text from Terrence. "Saw it all on the live stream. You're clear. Call me when the dust settles." Marcus almost smiled. The sergeant's voice drew him back. "We'll need a statement, Mr. Hill. For now, please stay here while we clear your house and recover any evidence the suspects might have left behind." Marcus nodded. "Of course. Everything's on my system. I'll export the footage to your evidence portal." He stepped back into his living room, watching through the drone as the police lined the imposters against the cruiser. One of them tried to shout about his rights, but another officer simply read him his Miranda warning. As Marcus moved through his house, checking each door and window, his training kept him in a calm rhythm. Clear, secure, verify. The smell of pepper irritant still hung in the air, but now it felt like the residue of victory rather than desperation. He paused at his operations desk and stared at the tablet. The footage still looping. They thought they could outflank me in my own home. Not today. Outside, the sergeant's voice rose. "We've confirmed these individuals are not affiliated with any security firm or homeowners association. They're being arrested for impersonating officers and unlawful entry." A murmur ran through the small crowd of neighbors. Marcus heard someone say, "Guess Marcus wasn't crazy after all." He allowed himself a single deep breath, feeling the adrenaline ebb. The house was still his. His reputation was intact. The imposters were in cuffs, but in the quiet corner of his mind, he knew this wasn't over. Someone had sent these men. Someone with a plan detailed enough to know his address, his weapons, and his HOA. He reached for his phone and dialed Terrence. "Hey." Terrence answered immediately. "That was textbook, man. Clean. You flipped the whole scene." "They're not amateurs," Marcus said. "Somebody's backing them. This wasn't a random burglary." "I'll dig," Terrence promised. "Meanwhile, send me the raw footage. I'll get it to the feds." Marcus nodded slowly. "Do it. Because if they come again, next time they won't be pretending to be security." He hung up, watching through the window as the last imposter was loaded into the back of a cruiser. The siren of his own alarm had finally fallen silent, leaving only the distant murmur of neighbors and the low hum of his drone overhead. The sergeant stepped back onto his porch, this time with a faint smile. "You're clear, Mr. Hill," she said. "You kept your cool and documented everything. That's rare. You saved yourself a lot of trouble." Marcus inclined his head. "Training kicks in," he said. "You learn to think 3 moves ahead." Her smile faded slightly. "Whoever sent them may try again," she warned. "We'll coordinate with our investigative unit. Stay vigilant." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Always." As the cruisers rolled away with the imposters inside, Marcus closed his door gently and locked it. He glanced once more at his tablet, the frozen frame of the imposter planting the gun. The war wasn't over, but the first battle was his. The street outside Marcus's home had finally gone quiet. The last cruiser rolled away, its taillights fading into the dusk. A soft September breeze moved through the oaks, carrying the faint smell of pepper spray and exhaust. Marcus stood at his living room window for a long time, his arms crossed. His reflection in the glass looked tired but sharp-eyed, jaw set like granite. The imposters were gone, but his instinct screamed this was only an opening move. He closed the blinds and walked back to his ops box. The rugged tablet lay on the desk, still showing his drone feed. Marcus tapped to replay the moment the imposter planted the gun, watching frame by frame. His stomach tightened. The guy's movements weren't sloppy. They were smooth, professional. No neighborhood HOA enforcer moved like that. He opened his laptop and connected to his secure drive. All the footage uploaded automatically, each clip timestamped and watermarked. He created a folder labeled Briar Lane Incident 926 and dragged everything in. Then he fired off an email to Terrence with a single line. All raw files attached pushed to federal contact. He hit send, then sat back in his chair. The adrenaline that had kept him sharp now began to fade, leaving a slow ache in his chest. He rubbed his temples. From the kitchen, the smell of brewing coffee drifted in. Marcus had set it on before the cops left, knowing he'd need a clear head for the next phase. He poured a mug and took a slow sip, letting the bitter warmth ground him. His phone buzzed. Terrence again. Got everything, Terrence said. I'm sending it to an old buddy in ATF who owes me a favor. Marcus, this is bigger than a fake HOA dispute. These guys have been hitting gun owners across the county. I've been tracking similar reports. Break-ins, impersonators, guns missing. Always minority homeowners. Always the same MO. Marcus's grip tightened on the mug. Targeting black gun owners, he said flatly. Looks that way. They're trying to make it look like illegal possession or aggressive behavior so the victims lose their licenses, their reputations, or end up in jail. Marcus stared at the blinds. Who's backing them? Don't know yet. But your footage just gave us our first solid evidence. Serial numbers, faces, tactics. This might blow open a whole operation. Marcus let out a slow breath. Then we better make sure they don't come back before the feds get here. You still have that perimeter plan from your Army days? Terrence asked. Marcus almost smiled. I never stopped updating it. Good. Implement it. And Marcus, watch your six. I always do. He hung up, placed his mug down, and rolled out a blueprint of his house from a drawer. The paper was marked with small notes in his handwriting, updated over the years. Sight lines, blind spots, fallback points. Marcus had built his home security system like a miniature base. Now it was time to activate the full protocol. He walked through each room, checking locks, window sensors, and cameras. He replaced the drone battery and set it to auto-patrol the block every 15 minutes. He armed his motion lights and synced them with a silent alert on his phone. By the time he returned to the living room, the sky outside had turned indigo. Crickets chirped. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once and fell silent. Marcus sat at his kitchen table with a legal pad and began writing names. The HOA president, the board members who'd pushed the inspection, the security company that never showed up. He circled 3 names and underlined them twice. His pen paused. They knew exactly what guns I owned. Only a few people had access to that list. His state permit file, the local range where he practiced, and the HOA from the paperwork when he moved in. Someone had leaked it. He picked up his phone and dialed another number, one he hadn't used in years. Yeah? A deep voice answered after 2 rings. It's Hill, Marcus said. A pause. Then, didn't think I'd hear from you again. What's happening? Need intel. HOA infiltration. Fake security. Targeting black gun owners. Can you run a background check on some names? A low whistle. That's heavy. Send them over. You got a secure line. Always. Give me 2 hours. Marcus hung up and sent the list via encrypted app. Then he leaned back, eyes closing for a second. In his mind, he replayed the imposters' faces, their boots, their equipment. Not amateur criminals, contract operatives. The way they moved reminded him of training camps, not street crews. A sound at the window snapped him alert. He opened his eyes and froze. Outside, a car idled slowly past his house. No headlights on. The outline of 2 figures sat inside. Marcus's hand went to the edge of the table, fingers brushing his concealed holster. He didn't draw. Instead, he quietly reached for his tablet and tapped the drone feed. The drone pivoted midair and zoomed in on the car's plate. Snap. Snap. 2 photos sent instantly to his cloud. The car rolled past and turned the corner. Marcus stared at the screen. Temporary tags. No registration. He sent the photo to Terrence with a short note. They're already watching. His phone buzzed almost immediately. Terrence, get ready. If they're in the area tonight, you may have to hold out till law enforcement can act. Stay calm. Marcus exhaled. Calm was what he did best. He moved through the house again, double-checking every window and blind. Then he opened a locked cabinet under his stairs and pulled out a canvas bag. Inside were non-lethal tools, pepper grenades, smoke canisters, and a collapsible ballistic shield. He set them neatly on the floor, each one a piece of his contingency plan. His heart rate stayed steady. In his old unit, they called it combat breathing, the art of keeping your body in control when chaos tried to pull it apart. The neighborhood outside was quiet again, but Marcus knew it was a false calm. Whoever sent those imposters wouldn't take this defeat lightly. They'd regroup, and next time they might come heavier, faster. He sat back at his desk and opened a secure forum he used with other veterans. Under his handle, Iron Sentinel, he posted a vague message. Possible organized ring impersonating security to seize weapons from minority homeowners. Evidence obtained. Need rapid counter intel support. Within minutes, responses pinged back. Old comrades offering advice, contacts, and even to drive down and stand watch. Marcus typed back, "Not yet, just intel for now." Then he closed the laptop, stood, and walked to the front window again. The streetlights cast long shadows across the road. His drone buzzed softly overhead like an electronic hawk. His phone buzzed one last time before he turned in. It was Terrence again. "Good news. My TF guy says your footage is gold. They're spinning up a task force. Might be weeks before they act, but you just triggered a federal investigation." Marcus allowed himself a faint, grim smile. "Good," he texted back, "because they'll be back sooner than that." He pocketed his phone, dimmed the lights, and stood in the middle of his living room, listening to the quiet. The house felt like a fortress now, but also like a stage. Somewhere in the darkness beyond his lawn, eyes were watching. He whispered to himself, an old mantra from his service days. Plan, prepare, prevail. Then he walked to his bedroom, locked the door, and slid his pistol under the pillow. The night ahead would be long, but Marcus Hill was ready. The clock on Marcus's nightstand glowed 2:14 a.m. The house was dark except for a dim red glow from the hallway security light. Marcus lay awake, eyes open, listening to the creaks of the house settling. His pistol rested on the nightstand, fully loaded. The night had been still for hours. Even the crickets had gone silent. Then, a faint pop echoed from the backyard. Not a gunshot, more like a soft air-powered noise. Seconds later, his phone buzzed with a silent alert. Motion detected. Rear perimeter. Marcus rolled out of bed smoothly, bare feet landing on the carpet without a sound. His mind shifted gears. Combat breathing. Slow inhale. Long exhale. He grabbed his tablet and tapped the rear camera feed. 3 figures in black tactical gear were vaulting his back fence. They moved with precision, sweeping the yard with small infrared scopes. No patches, no identification. Night vision goggles. Suppressed weapons. They came back heavy. Marcus crouched at his closet and opened a heavy case labeled Protocol Delta. Inside, a ballistic vest, a headset, a collapsible shield, non-lethal grenades, and his old service-issued boots. He geared up quickly, the motions automatic. Vest snug shield on his back, grenades clipped to his belt. He slipped the headset into his ear and connected it to his phone. Terrence had insisted on an open line tonight. He whispered, "Terrence, they're here." Static crackled, then Terrence's voice, low and urgent. "How many?" 3 professional gear back fence. "I'm calling the county sheriff right now. Do not engage unless you have to." Marcus almost smiled grimly. "If they breach, I have to." He moved through his darkened hallway, tablet in one hand, pistol in the other. His drone hovered above the roof, its night camera feeding directly to his screen. He tapped Stream Live, and the footage went straight to Terrence's secure server. In the feed, the intruders spread out, 2 heading toward the back door, 1 circling to the side window. They weren't talking. Hand signals only. Marcus crouched behind his kitchen island, breathing slow. He pressed a button on his tablet. Outside, motion lights blazed on, flooding the yard with harsh white light. The intruders froze for a fraction of a second, then surged forward. Marcus hit another button. A deafening siren erupted from his outdoor speakers. The air filled with the sound of a roaring alarm and a pre-recorded command. Armed homeowner. Intrusion recorded. Law enforcement notified. Leave immediately. But they didn't leave. The man at the side window raised a crowbar and smashed the glass. They're coming in. Marcus pulled the pin on a flashbang and rolled it toward the hallway leading from the window. He covered his ears. A blinding crack and burst of white light filled the hallway. The intruder cried out, dropping his weapon and stumbling back. Marcus moved like water. He stepped from cover, raised his pistol, and barked. Down. Drop ITNOW. The blinded man fell to one knee, clutching his face. Marcus kicked the weapon away and pivoted back toward the kitchen door. Another intruder kicked the back door open with a splintering crack. Marcus grabbed his shield and braced as a suppressed round thunked into the Kevlar panel. He tossed a smoke canister into the kitchen and ducked behind the counter. White haze billowed instantly, filling the room and reducing visibility to a few feet. Through the smoke, Marcus's voice boomed over the speakers again, calm and commanding. You are trespassing and recorded. Armed response authorized. Law enforcement inbound. Drop your weapons now. The intruders hesitated. One of them cursed. Marcus heard the metallic clink of something. Maybe they were about to throw their own device. He didn't wait. He launched another flashbang toward the sound and rolled low across the floor. The crack shook the room, and he heard bodies hitting the ground. From his headset, Terrence's voice. Sheriff's units 3 minutes out. Hold them. Marcus crouched at the base of his staircase. Shield raised. Copy. 2 down. Third unconfirmed. The smoke thinned enough for him to see silhouettes. One intruder lay prone, hands over his head. Another was crawling toward the door. Marcus stepped forward, pressed the muzzle of his pistol to the floor inches from the man's hand, and barked. Hands flat. Now, the man froze. The third intruder, the one who'd circled to the side window, emerged from the haze suddenly, swinging a baton at Marcus's head. Marcus ducked under it, pivoted, and slammed his shield into the attacker's chest. The impact sent the man sprawling backward into the kitchen table, which splintered under the weight. Marcus moved fast, kicking away the man's weapon and pinning him with the shield. Hands where I can see them, he roared. All 3 were down now, 2 disoriented. 1 pinned. Marcus's heart hammered, but his breathing stayed steady. He swept his pistol back and forth, covering each target. Outside, distant sirens grew louder. Blue and red lights flickered at the edge of his front yard. Marcus tapped his headset. Sheriff's here, I'm secure. Suspects down. Terrence's voice came back odd. That was textbook, Marcus. Hold your position. Don't move when they enter. Marcus backed up slowly toward the center of the living room, lowering his pistol, but keeping it ready. Copy. Standing by. The front door burst open and sheriff's deputies flooded in. Rifles up. Sheriff's department. One shouted. Homeowner dropped the weapon. Marcus set his pistol on the floor and raised his empty hands high. Weapon down. I'm the homeowner. Suspect subdued in kitchen. The deputies swept past him, shouting commands at the intruders. In seconds they were in cuffs, faces pressed to the tile. The sheriff herself, a broad-shouldered woman in a tan uniform, stepped inside, eyes scanning the scene. You Marcus Hill? She asked. Yes, ma'am. You okay? Marcus nodded once. Fine. They're professionals. Suppress weapons. Tried to breach my house. I've got everything on camera. Her eyes flicked to his gear, the smoke still curling in the kitchen. Looks like you handled it. I followed protocol, Marcus said simply. She looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, We've been tracking a crew like this. Didn't know they'd hit this neighborhood. She turned to her deputies. Get those weapons bagged. Secure all evidence. As the intruders were let out, one glared back at Marcus through swollen eyes. Marcus met his stare evenly. Outside, neighbors had gathered again, whispering as the scene unfolded under flashing lights. The imposters were loaded into waiting cruisers, The sheriff turned back to Marcus. You just did half our job for us. These guys have been terrorizing homeowners for months, but you're the first who caught them in the act. Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. They targeted me because they thought I'd break. They were wrong. She gave a faint smile. We'll need a full statement, and you might want to get some rest. Marcus glanced at his shattered window, the haze still lingering. I'll rest when this network's dismantled. The sheriff nodded. With your evidence, we might finally do that. As the last cruiser rolled away, Marcus stood in the doorway of his battered home. The night air smelled of smoke and adrenaline. His drone hovered above, capturing every angle like a silent witness. He whispered the same mantra again, almost to himself. Plan, prepare, prevail. This time it felt less like a warning and more like a promise. The neighborhood was silent in the aftermath of Marcus's tactical counter. A warm breeze drifted through the oaks lining Cedar Pine Lane, rustling the HOA's little community pride flags like they were surrender signals. A few minutes earlier, the cul-de-sac had been a war zone of words, body cams, and barking orders. Now, it was eerily quiet. People peered through blinds. Cell phone cameras flickered from upstairs windows. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Marcus stood in his yard, breathing hard. His heart still pounded from the adrenaline rush of flipping the script on the fake HOA cops. His AR-15 lay slung over his shoulder, safety on, muzzle pointed down. He wasn't reckless. Everything he'd done had been by the book. Still, the weight of the moment pressed on him like a sandbag. Across the street, the fake HOA cops were no longer the swaggering figures they'd been an hour ago. Their tactical vests looked like costumes now, their badges like cheap props. One had sat down on the curb, face pale, hands trembling. The other stared at Marcus, eyes darting between his weapon and the growing crowd of neighbors gathering at the edges of the lawns. You don't understand what you just did, the taller man muttered, voice breaking. Oh, I understand perfectly, Marcus replied, his voice low but carrying. You came onto my property under false authority. You tried to seize my legally owned firearms. And you tried to intimidate me in front of my family. You messed with the wrong veteran. The crowd murmured. Someone whispered, he's a veteran? Another, he's got the law on his side. Cell phones kept rolling, catching every word. Suddenly, flashing blue and red lights bathed the cul-de-sac. Real law enforcement. The county sheriff's SUV screeched to a stop at the corner, followed by two cruisers. The HOA imposters stiffened. One started fumbling for his ID. Marcus simply stepped back, weapon slung but hands open. Sheriff Dalton, a big man with a tan Stetson and a calm voice, got out first. Marcus Green? He called. Yes, sir, Marcus said. Weapon is on safe slinged. Hands free. The sheriff nodded, eyes flicking to the imposters. You two stay put. They did. The tension was thick, but Marcus felt a flicker of relief. Real authority had arrived. He knew Dalton from town meetings. The man was gruff but fair, and unlike the HOA board, he didn't play favorites. What's going on here? Dalton asked. Marcus didn't speak right away. Instead, he gestured to the cameras, his neighbors and his own, still streaming to his cloud backup. Everything's on record, Sheriff, Marcus said. They claim to be HOA enforcement with authority to confiscate my guns. I asked for their credentials. They couldn't provide. They trespassed. They threatened. Dalton's jaw tightened. He turned to the imposters. That true? The taller one licked his lips. We're with the HOA compliance team. Dalton's brows rose. There's no such thing as an HOA compliance team with police powers. They told us they had authority. The second one blurted. The board gave us these badges. Dalton's expression hardened. Badges don't make you cops. He called to one of his deputies. Cuff him. As the deputies moved in, the taller man finally snapped. We were just trying to protect the neighborhood. He's dangerous. Look at all those guns. Marcus kept his voice steady. Dangerous? I've lived here 8 years without a single incident. The only danger here is you impersonating law enforcement. The deputies clicked the cuffs on. The crowd let out a collective gasp. Some neighbors started clapping softly, hesitant at first, then louder. The sound grew like a wave rolling through the cul-de-sac. Marcus didn't smile. He just lowered his eyes. His hands were still trembling, not from fear, but from the release of pressure. It had taken every ounce of discipline to keep things from going sideways. Dalton stepped closer to Marcus. "You handled this by the book," he said quietly. "I'm gonna need your footage for evidence, but you did everything right." "Appreciate that, Sheriff," Marcus said. "I wasn't gonna let them trample my rights. Not today." Dalton nodded and turned to the crowd. "Folks, we're gonna take these individuals down to the station. If any of you witness this or have video, please share it with my office and go on back inside. Show's over." But the show wasn't over. Not really. Neighbors came up to Marcus as the cruisers rolled away with the imposters inside. Some apologized for not speaking up sooner. Others admitted they'd been intimidated by the HOA for months. A middle-aged woman with a soft southern drawl put her hand on Marcus's arm. "Thank you for standing up," she said. "They told my son they could fine him for having a basketball hoop in the driveway. We didn't know what to do." Marcus gave her a nod. "They've been getting away with too much because folks are scared. That stops now." From his porch, Marcus's father, a stoic man with silver hair, watched quietly. His daughter-in-law held little Miles close, whispering that everything was okay. The boy peeked out, wide-eyed but safe, as Marcus walked back to his house. The weight of everything settled on him. He had defended his rights and his home, but he also knew the battle wasn't over. The HOA board had sent those men. They wouldn't just disappear quietly. There would be hearings, complaints, maybe even lawsuits. Still, for the first time in months, Marcus felt something powerful stirring inside him. Solidarity. Neighbors were looking at him differently, not as the man with guns, but as the man who stood up when no one else would. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Cedar Pine Lane was quiet again, but the quiet wasn't fear anymore. It felt like a pause before change, the kind of pause that comes right after someone draws a line in the sand. Inside, Marcus sat at his kitchen table, phone buzzing with texts and social media notifications. The video of the showdown was already spreading. Local news had reached out. His old army buddy had sent a message. "Saw what you did. Proud of you, brother," he exhaled, staring at the screen. This was bigger than a single incident now. This was about power, about rights, about dignity, and Marcus knew the next steps would be crucial. Upstairs, Miles was asleep. His wife came down and sat beside Marcus, slipping her hand into his. "You okay?" she asked softly. "I will be," Marcus said. "But this isn't over, not by a long shot." He glanced out the window at the HOA office across the street, its blinds drawn tight. He could feel them watching even now. The storm had passed, but the war for the neighborhood's soul was just beginning. Marcus squeezed his wife's hand. "They thought they could scare us. Now it's our turn to hold them accountable." And with that, he opened his laptop, pulling up legal statutes, HOA bylaws, and a fresh document titled Operation Liberty Cedar Pine. The real work was about to begin. The next morning, Cedar Pine Lane looked almost normal again. Sunlight glinted off dewy lawns. Sprinklers hissed in quiet arcs. The smell of coffee drifted from open windows, but beneath the surface, something had changed. People who used to avoid eye contact with Marcus were now nodding at him, raising hands in small waves as they passed. Even the couple from the corner house, the ones who had once reported his truck for being too military-looking, walked over with muffins in a paper bag. "Just thank you," the woman said, her eyes soft. "We were scared to stand up to them. Now maybe we won't be." Marcus accepted the bag, managing a tired smile. He hadn't slept much. The footage from last night had gone viral, first on Facebook, then on Twitter, then onto local news. Clips of him calmly, but firmly standing his ground played on morning broadcasts with headlines like "Veteran Confronts Fake HOA Cops" and "Community Rights Clash in Cedar Pine." Sitting at his kitchen table, Marcus scrolled through the comments. Most were supportive. Veterans groups, gun rights advocates, even community organizers were praising him. But there were also warnings. People saying the HOA board would retaliate, that imposters like those men rarely act alone. His wife poured him coffee. "You've started something," she said. "People are looking to you now." He stared into the mug. I didn't ask to lead anything. No, she said gently. But leadership sometimes finds you. Later that morning, Marcus's doorbell rang. He opened it to find three of his neighbors: Mrs. Carver, a retired teacher; Jamal, a young father from 2 streets over; and Sophia, a lawyer who'd moved in last year. They stood like a delegation. "We want to help," Jamal said. "What you did yesterday gave us courage, but the HOA's still there. They're gonna regroup." Sophia stepped forward. "I'm an attorney. HOA bylaws, local ordinances. I've been studying them since I moved here. I've seen how they abuse power. We can file injunctions, demand an audit, force transparency, but we'll need evidence and signatures." Marcus blinked at them. "You're serious?" Mrs. Carver smiled faintly. "I taught history for 35 years. If there's one thing I know, it's that change only happens when good people stand together." For the first time since the confrontation, Marcus felt the weight on his shoulders lighten. This wasn't just him anymore. It was them. "Come in," he said. They gathered at his kitchen table. Marcus pulled out the file he started the night before, Operation Liberty Cedar Pine. He explained his plan: document every instance of harassment or overreach, collect neighbor testimonies, pressure the county to investigate, and, if necessary, sue the HOA board for unlawful practices. Sophia's eyes lit up. "We'll build a case, class action if we have to, and I'll handle the legal filings pro bono." Jamal nodded. "And I can handle outreach. Flyers, social media, door to door. We'll show people they're not alone." Mrs. Carver placed a hand over Marcus's. "You led by example, son. Now let us lead with you." He exhaled slowly. "All right, let's do this." By noon, they'd mapped out their first steps. Sophia drafted a formal cease and desist letter to the HOA board, demanding an immediate halt to unauthorized enforcement activities. Jamal set up a private Facebook group for residents to share stories and videos. Marcus compiled all his footage and uploaded it to a secure drive. As they worked, more neighbors trickled in. A couple who'd been fined for unauthorized landscaping, a single mom who'd been told to remove her kid's swing set, a retiree who'd been threatened with eviction for feeding stray cats. Each one brought documents, letters, or photos. The pile of evidence grew by the hour. At 3 o'clock, Marcus's father came down from upstairs, where he'd been watching little Miles. The old man's eyes glistened with quiet pride. "You're building a platoon here," he murmured. Marcus chuckled softly. "Feels like it." That evening, they held an impromptu meeting on Marcus's front lawn. Folding chairs lined the grass. The setting sun painted the sky in streaks of orange and pink. Dozens of neighbors showed up, some clutching copies of HOA violation notices, others just curious. The air buzzed with nervous energy. Marcus stood at the makeshift podium, a wooden crate someone had dragged over, and addressed them. His voice carried steady and clear. "Yesterday, we saw what happens when power goes unchecked," he began. "Two men showed up pretending to be law enforcement, trying to take away my rights. But this isn't just about me. It's about all of us. About dignity, about fairness, about standing together." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Jamal passed out flyers with the Facebook group link and a petition for a special meeting to vote on removing the current HOA board.